The morning they served me the papers, I was planting rosemary in the garden bed I'd spent 3 weekends preparing. The soil was dark and rich beneath my fingers, and I remember thinking how perfect it smelled, like earth and promise and all the quiet dreams I'd been too afraid to speak aloud. The process server was apologetic, almost embarrassed, as he handed me the envelope. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, and I believed him. His shoes were muddy from my freshly watered lawn, and somehow that small detail, the way he tried to wipe them clean on the grass before walking back to his car, stays with me even now. I didn't open the envelope immediately. Instead, I finished planting the rosemary, patting the soil gently around its base, whispering a small prayer for its roots to take hold. Only when my hands were washed clean and I was sitting at my kitchen table, my own kitchen table, in my own house, did I slide my finger under the seal. The plaintiffs were listed clearly: Robert and Martha Chen, my parents. The defendant, Sarah Chen, their eldest daughter, me. The claim that the house at 412 Maple Street, purchased in my name, was rightfully the property of their youngest daughter, Jessica Chen, and that I had used undue influence and deceptive practices to acquire what was meant for her. I read it 3 times before the words stopped swimming. Then I set the papers down, walked to my bedroom, and sat on the floor of my closet, the walk-in closet I'd been so proud of when the realtor first showed me the house. I sat there among my carefully organized shoes and the work clothes I'd worn thin from overtime shifts, and I didn't cry. I couldn't. Some betrayals go so deep they bypass tears entirely and settle into your bones like winter. The house wasn't grand. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen that needed updating but had good bones. The backyard was what sold me, large enough for the garden I'd always wanted, with a massive oak tree that had probably been there since before my parents came to this country. The inspector said the roof would need replacing in 5 years, and the heating system was older but functional. I didn't care. When I walked through the front door the first time, something in my chest unclenched, like a fist that had been closed for 32 years finally relaxing. I'd saved for this house the way other people save for dreams, desperately, religiously, sacrificially. Every overtime shift at the hospital, every holiday I worked while others gathered with family, every dinner that was ramen instead of real food, every year I drove the same deteriorating Honda while Jessica got a new car for her birthday. It all went into an account I labeled future because I couldn't bring myself to write home. Home was too loaded a word, too full of what I'd never really had. Growing up, I learned early that love in our family was a finite resource, and somehow Jessica needed all of it. She was born when I was 7, premature and fragile, spending her first month in the NICU. I remember pressing my nose against the glass, watching her tiny chest rise and fall, promising God I'd be the best big sister if he'd just let her live. God kept his end of the bargain. I tried to keep mine. But somewhere along the way, my parents decided that Jessica's early struggle meant she deserved not just more attention, but all of it. "Sarah's strong," my mother would say when teachers asked why they never came to my school events. "She doesn't need us hovering." Strong. I wore that word like armor made of paper, letting it cover all the soft parts that wanted to be seen, to be celebrated, to be chosen just once. I got straight A's. Jessica needed tutoring, so there was no money for my academic awards dinners. I got into Berkeley. Jessica was having anxiety about me leaving, so I went to state school instead and lived at home. I became a nurse. Jessica said medical talk made her queasy, so I learned not to speak about my days saving lives at the dinner table. The rosemary I'd planted that morning was from my grandmother. She died when I was 19, but before she did, she taught me her recipes, her garden wisdom, her quiet way of surviving in a family that didn't see you. Rosemary for remembrance, she'd say in Mandarin, then switch to English, but also for protection. Plant it by your door, Sarah. Keep the negative energy out. I'd never had my own door before. Not really. Even the bedroom I'd grown up in had no lock, and Jessica would wander in whenever she pleased, taking whatever caught her eye. My parents said sharing was what families did, but it wasn't sharing when only one person gave and another only took. It was something else, something that left you hollow and guilty for feeling hollow. Maple Street was supposed to be different. I'd toured 17 houses over 6 months, always alone, because I knew better than to invite my parents. They'd come to Jessica's apartment hunting, of course, all three of them spending weekends visiting luxury complexes she couldn't afford, my parents promising to help with the deposit, while I sat in my rental room, knowing no help would ever come my way. But I didn't need their help. That was the gift of being forgotten. You learn to need nothing from anyone. Every dollar saved was my own. Every form filed was by my own hand. Every decision was mine alone. When I finally got the keys, I sat in my car in the driveway and sobbed, huge, body-shaking sobs that felt like they'd been waiting years to escape. I'd done it. I'd bought myself a place in the world that no one could take away, or so I thought. The first time I mentioned buying a house, we were at dim sum for my mother's birthday. Jessica was complaining about her apartment. The neighbors were too loud, the gym was too small, the location wasn't convenient to her favorite shopping district. Maybe it's time you looked into buying, my father suggested to her, and I watched my mother nod enthusiastically. Actually, I said, cutting into a hargow, I've been looking at houses myself. The table went silent. Not the comfortable silence of family contemplating, but the sharp silence of surprise, maybe even offense. You? My mother said finally. Why would you need a house? To live in, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I've saved enough for a down payment. Jessica laughed, that tinkling laugh she'd perfected in high school, the one that sounded sweet but cut deep. Sarah, you can't be serious. Houses are so much work, and you're always at the hospital. When would you even have time to maintain a yard? I'll figure it out, I said. Besides, my father added, setting down his chopsticks with the kind of deliberation that meant a pronouncement was coming, you're not married. What's the point of a house with no family to fill it? It would be my family, I said quietly, my home. My mother reached across the table and patted my hand, the gesture so patronizing I had to force myself not to pull away. Sarah, always so independent, but really, save your money. When Jessica's ready to buy, we'll all go in on something together, a family investment. I'm buying my own house, I said, louder this time. They exchanged looks, the kind of looks they'd been exchanging over my head since Jessica was born, the kind that said I was being difficult, selfish, not understanding my role. Well, my mother said, turning back to Jessica, when you're ready, sweetheart, we'll help you find something perfect. I stopped mentioning my house hunt after that. 3 months later, I found 412 Maple Street. The seller was an elderly woman moving to a retirement community, and she'd taken immaculate care of the place. The inspection revealed minor issues, nothing I couldn't handle or save to fix. The morning I signed the papers, my hand shook so badly the notary asked if I needed water. Just nervous, I told her. First house. She smiled. The first one's always special. Your family must be so proud. I smiled back and said nothing. I moved in quietly, taking vacation days to pack and transport my things. I didn't hire movers, couldn't risk my parents finding out through the extended family gossip network. Box by box, I carried my life from the rental room to my house. My books, my grandmother's jade plant that I'd kept alive for 13 years, my work scrubs, the quilt I'd made during night shifts when I couldn't sleep. Each item placed in my new space felt like a small act of rebellion, a tiny declaration of independence. The first night I slept there, I lay in my bed, in my own room, in my own house, and listened to the sounds. The oak tree brushing against the window, the settling of walls that were mine, the hum of my refrigerator, my water heater, my life finally beginning at 32. I lasted 3 weeks before the guilt ate through my joy. My parents had called several times, wondering why I hadn't been by for Sunday dinner. Jessica had texted, needing money for something or other, getting angry when I didn't respond immediately. The weight of the secret felt like carrying stones in my chest, so I invited them over. I have something to show you, I said on the phone to my mother. Can you and Dad come by this Saturday? Jessica too? Is everything okay? My mother asked, and I could hear the suspicion in her voice. Sarah never asked for anything. Sarah never had news. Sarah was the backdrop against which Jessica's life played out in vibrant color. Everything's fine, I said. I just want to share something with you. They arrived together, of course. Jessica driving the new SUV my parents had co-signed for. My parents in the back seat like she was their chauffeur to my mysterious event. I watched from the window as they pulled up, saw my father look at the house with confusion, my mother checking the address on her phone, Jessica's face already set in irritation at being dragged to this unfamiliar neighborhood. I opened the door before they could knock. "Welcome to my home," I said. The silence stretched like taffy. They stood on my porch, with the rosemary I'd planted and the welcome mat I'd chosen and the door I'd painted a soft sage green, and stared. "You rented this?" my mother finally asked. "I bought it," I said, 3 weeks ago. Jessica pushed past me, walking into my living room uninvited, her shoes, which she didn't remove, despite the clear shoe rack by the door, clicking on my hardwood floors. "You bought this? How?" "I saved," I said simply. My father was doing calculations in his head. I could see it in his eyes. The location, the size, the probable cost, the down payment alone. 12 years of saving, I said, every extra shift, every overtime opportunity. But my mother looked genuinely confused, like the world had tilted off its axis. "You never said anything." "I did," I reminded her. "At dim sum, you said I should wait, help Jessica buy instead." "That was different," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "That was theoretical. This is—" She looked around my entryway, at the pictures I'd hung, none of them family photos, I realize now, at the coat rack, at the small table where I kept my keys and mail. "This is real." Jessica emerged from her self-guided tour, and I could see the calculations in her eyes, different from my father's. She was measuring my audacity, the gall I'd had to accomplish something without permission, without assistance, without making it about her. "It's nice," she said, in the tone that meant it wasn't. "Small, though. And this neighborhood, it's kind of far from everything." "It's 15 minutes from the hospital," I said. "Perfect for me." "But what about when you have family over?" my mother asked. "Where would everyone stay?" I wanted to laugh. In 32 years, they'd never once stayed at my place. Even when I'd had my rental, they'd never visited. Family gatherings were at their house or Jessica's apartment. I was the one who traveled, who accommodated, who fit myself into the spaces they allowed. "I have a guest room," I said instead. 2, actually. 2? Jessica's voice pitched higher. "This place has 3 bedrooms and you live alone?" "Yes," I said simply. She turned to our parents. "She has 3 bedrooms. I'm cramped in a 1-bedroom apartment and she has 3 bedrooms." I watched my mother's face shift, that familiar transformation when Jessica's distress activated her protective instincts. "Sarah," she began, and I knew what was coming. "Perhaps you could rent one of the rooms to Jessica, just until she saves enough." "No," I said. The word hung in the air like a challenge. "No," my father repeated, his voice taking on the edge that used to make me apologize reflexively. "No," I said again, steadier this time. "This is my home. I bought it for me." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She'd always been able to cry on command, a skill that had gotten her out of trouble and into favor for as long as I could remember. "I can't believe you'd be so selfish after everything our parents have done for you." "What?" The word escaped before I could stop it. "What exactly have they done for me?" "Sarah," my mother gasped, "how dare you?" "No, really," I said, my voice calm in the way that only comes when you've passed through anger into something colder and clearer. "Tell me, what have you done for me that you haven't done 10 times over for Jessica?" "We raised you," my father said, his voice dangerous. "We fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof." "The legal minimum," I interrupted. "You did the legal minimum required of parents, and even then only barely. Do you remember my high school graduation? No, because you weren't there. Jessica had a dance recital. Do you remember when I got into Berkeley? No, because you were too busy consoling Jessica about her community college rejection to celebrate with me. Do you remember any birthday of mine after Jessica was born? Any achievement?
Any moment that was just mine? You're being dramatic, my mother said, but her voice wavered. I'm being honest, I said, and honestly, I'm tired. I'm tired of being the one who gives and never receives. I'm tired of being the backdrop to Jessica's life. I'm tired of apologizing for existing. This house, this is mine. I earned it. I saved for it. I signed for it. And I'm not sharing it, renting it, or apologizing for it. Jessica stormed out first, of course. She'd always had a flair for exits. My parents followed, my mother turning back at the door to deliver one last blow. I never thought you'd become so heartless, Sarah. We didn't raise you to be this way. No, I agreed. You didn't raise me at all. I raised myself. The door closed behind them with a soft click. I stood in my entryway, in my house, and waited to feel regret. Instead, I felt something unknot in my chest, a loosening of ties I hadn't realized were strangling me. For 2 months, there was silence. No calls, no texts, no Sunday dinner invitations I had to decline. I threw myself into making the house truly mine. I painted the main bedroom a soft lavender gray, hung shelves for my books, started the herb garden I'd always wanted. I learned to cook in my own kitchen, not rushed or squeezed into corners while my mother prepared Jessica's favorites. I had colleagues over for dinner, joined a weekend hiking group, adopted a cat from the shelter who liked to sleep in the squares of sunlight that moved across my living room floor. I was learning to be happy, not the desperate, grasping happiness of getting scraps of approval, but the steady, quiet happiness of building a life on your own terms. Then came the lawsuit. The papers claimed that I had manipulated my parents into believing I would hold the house in trust for Jessica, that there had been verbal agreements, promises made, understandings reached. It was all lies, of course, but lies wrapped in enough legal language to require response. I hired a lawyer with the money I'd set aside for the roof replacement, Patricia Reeves, a woman in her 50s who listened to my story with the kind of attention I'd craved from my parents my whole life. They don't have a case, she said after reviewing everything. Your name is on the deed. You can document the source of your down payment. There's no evidence of any trust agreement. Then why? I asked. She looked at me with something like pity. Sometimes people sue not to win, but to punish, to force you back into line. They want me to give Jessica the house? They want you to give Jessica everything, Patricia corrected. The house is just the current battlefield. We filed our response. I provided bank statements going back 12 years, showing every deposit, every carefully hoarded dollar. I had no gifts from my parents to explain, no sudden windfalls. Just the steady accumulation of overtime pay, holiday shifts, and the kind of bone-deep frugality that comes from knowing no one will catch you if you fall. The court date was set for a Thursday in September. I took the day off work, told my colleagues I had a family matter to attend to. They assumed it was a wedding or reunion, something normal and celebratory. I let them think that. The courthouse was one of those modern buildings that tried to look less intimidating than it was, with glass walls and indoor plants that didn't quite soften the institutional edges. I arrived early, sitting in my car in the parking lot, watching people stream in and out. Lawyers with their rolling briefcases, couples holding hands or avoiding eye contact, families clustered together in support or fracturing apart in real time. Patricia met me at the entrance. "You ready?" "No," I said honestly, "but I'm here." That's all that matters. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Television had prepared me for grand spaces with soaring ceilings and dramatic lighting. Instead, it was functional and fluorescent, with uncomfortable benches and a judge's bench that looked more like a particularly authoritative desk. My parents and Jessica were already there, sitting with their lawyer on the other side of the aisle. Jessica had dressed for impact, a conservative dress that made her look younger, more vulnerable than her 25 years. My parents flanked her protectively. None of them looked at me. Their lawyer was a man who looked like he sold used cars on the weekends, all artificial smile and aggressive posture. He stood when we entered, sizing us up like we were prey. "All rise," the bailiff called, and Judge Amanda Torres entered. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with the kind of no-nonsense energy that made you stand straighter. "Be seated," she said, already reviewing the files in front of her. "This is the matter of Chen versus Chen. I've reviewed the submitted documents. Let's proceed." Their lawyer went first. The story he told was so divorced from reality, I might have laughed if it hadn't been my life he was rewriting. According to him, I was the scheming older daughter who had taken advantage of my parents' limited English, they'd been in the country for 40 years and both had graduate degrees, and their trust in family to essentially steal money they'd intended for Jessica. My clients, he said with practiced sincerity, believed they were investing in a family property. Sarah Chen led them to believe she was purchasing the house for the family's benefit, with the understanding that her younger sister would be the primary resident. Did your clients provide any money toward the purchase? Judge Torres asked. The lawyer shuffled papers. Not directly, Your Honor, but there were verbal agreements. I asked about money, the judge interrupted. Did the plaintiffs contribute financially to the purchase of the property? No, Your Honor, but— Continue, she said, making a note. He spun a tale of implied promises, of a daughter who had hidden her intentions, of parents who only wanted fairness between their children. Jessica dabbed at her eyes at strategic moments. My mother clutched my father's hand like they were victims of some terrible crime. As Patricia stood for our response, she was calm and methodical. She presented my bank statements, my pay stubs, the clear paper trail of a woman who had saved every penny she could for over a decade. Your Honor, she said, my client, Sarah Chen, has worked as a registered nurse for 12 years. She has documented every overtime shift, every holiday worked, every sacrifice made to save for this house. She signed the papers, she paid the down payment, she makes the mortgage payments. At no point did the plaintiffs contribute financially or have any reasonable expectation of ownership. Ms. Chen, Judge Torres addressed me directly. Did you ever discuss this purchase with your parents? I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. Yes, Your Honor, once. I told them I was planning to buy a house. They told me not to. They said I should wait and help my sister buy instead. And did you agree to that? No, Your Honor. I said I was buying my own house. And what was their response? I could feel my parents' eyes on me now, boring into the side of my head. They changed the subject. They started discussing how they would help my sister buy a place when she was ready. The judge made another note. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, did you contribute any money toward the purchase of this house? My parents whispered with their lawyer before my father stood. Not directly, Your Honor, but we supported Sarah her whole life. That's not what I asked, Judge Torres cut him off. Did you contribute money toward the purchase of the house at 412 Maple Street? No, he admitted. Did your name appear on any of the paperwork? No. Did you co-sign the loan? No. Then on what basis do you claim ownership? My mother stood abruptly. Because she promised. She said it was for Jessica. When, the judge asked, do you have any documentation of this promise? Texts, emails, a written agreement? The silence stretched out. Their lawyer tried to object, to redirect, but there was nothing to redirect to. They had no evidence, because there was no evidence, just their assumption that everything I had would eventually become Jessica's, the way it always had. Your Honor, Patricia said, we'd like to submit additional evidence. She presented receipts I'd kept from childhood, the jobs I'd worked in high school while Jessica took art classes, the scholarships I'd earned while my parents paid for Jessica's tutoring, the student loans I'd taken out while Jessica's college was paid in full. It painted a picture I'd never intended to paint, one of systematic favoritism, so stark that even I was uncomfortable seeing it laid out so clearly. I'd also like to submit these, Patricia continued, pulling out a folder I didn't recognize. Text messages between the plaintiffs that my client provided. My stomach dropped. I'd given her my phone to search for any relevant communication, but I hadn't thought about the family group chat I'd long since muted. Patricia read them aloud, her voice neutral. From Martha Chen to Robert Chen. Can you believe Sarah actually bought a house? Who does she think she is? From Robert Chen to Martha Chen. Let her have her little rebellion. When she sees how hard it is, she'll come crawling back. From Jessica Chen to Group. It's not fair that Sarah has a house when I don't. You promised I'd be the first to have everything. From Martha Chen to Group. Don't worry, sweetheart, we'll figure something out. Sarah has always been selfish, but she's still family. She'll share. From Martha Chen to Robert Chen, dated 1 week before this lawsuit was filed. If Sarah won't give Jessica the house willingly, we'll make her. She owes us that much for all the years we put up with her. Put up with her. With me, their daughter. Judge Torres was quiet for a long moment, reviewing everything. The courtroom felt airless, like we were all holding our breath. "I've seen enough," she finally said. "This case is clear-cut. The plaintiffs have provided no evidence of financial contribution, no documentation of any agreement, and no legal basis for their claim. What they have shown is a pattern of attempting to manipulate the court system to take property that was legally purchased by the defendant." She looked directly at my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, what you've done here is shameful. You've attempted to use the legal system to steal from your own daughter. A daughter who, from all evidence, has been supporting herself without your help for years. You've wasted this court's time and resources with a frivolous lawsuit based entirely on your belief that one child deserves more than another." Then she turned to me and her expression softened slightly. "Miss Chen, the house at 412 Maple Street is yours, free and clear. The plaintiff's case is dismissed with prejudice, meaning they cannot refile this claim. Furthermore, I am ordering the plaintiffs to pay all court costs and the defendant's legal fees." "Your Honor," their lawyer sputtered, "my clients can't afford." "They can afford to file a frivolous lawsuit. They can afford the consequences," Judge Torres said firmly. "This is my ruling. Court dismissed." The gavel came down with a sound like finality. I sat for a moment, unable to move. It was over. Just like that, it was over. Patricia touched my shoulder gently. "You did it." "We did it," I corrected. Across the aisle, Jessica was crying. Real tears this time, not the manipulative kind. My mother was stone-faced, staring at nothing. My father was whispering urgently with their lawyer, probably about appeals or other options that didn't exist. I stood to leave, and that's when my mother called out, "Sarah!" I stopped, but didn't turn around. "How could you?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How could you do this to your family?" I did turn then, meeting her eyes for what felt like the first time in my life, really meeting them, as equals, as adults, as strangers who happened to share blood. "I didn't do anything to you," I said quietly. "I just stopped letting you do things to me." I walked out of the courtroom, Patricia beside me, into the September sunshine. The air smelled like approaching fall, like change, like possibility. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked as we stood on the courthouse steps. "Free," I said, and meant it. The aftermath was quieter than I'd expected. No dramatic family confrontations, no extended relatives calling to mediate, just silence, the kind of silence that feels like an ending and a beginning all at once. I paid Patricia with my roof replacement fund, but she gave me a significant discount. "Consider it an investment in justice," she said. "Besides, your case was straightforward. Your parents did all the work of proving themselves wrong. They paid the court costs and legal fees without protest, though I heard through the family grapevine that they'd had to take out a loan. Jessica moved back in with them shortly after, her apartment too expensive without the financial help she'd been secretly receiving from our parents. The family narrative, I learned from a cousin who reached out, was that I had betrayed them, turned my back on my culture, become too American. I didn't correct it. Let them have their story. I had my truth. The house felt different after the lawsuit. Not physically, it was still the same 3 bedrooms, same kitchen that needed updating, same oak tree scratching at the windows. But something had shifted in my relationship to it. It was no longer just my house. It was my fortress, my sanctuary, my proof that I could build something beautiful without anyone's permission or approval. I finally planted the garden I dreamed of. Not just herbs, but vegetables too. Tomatoes that grew heavy on their vines, squash that spread across the ground like they were claiming territory, peppers that turned from green to red in the autumn sun. I learned to can, to preserve, to save the harvest for winter. There was something deeply satisfying about creating abundance from my own soil, my own labor, my own choices. The cat I'd adopted, a gray tabby I'd named Luna, established herself as the queen of the house. She had a way of appearing whenever I felt lonely, pressing her warm weight against my side, purring like a small engine. She didn't care about family drama or cultural expectations. She cared about sunny spots and dinner time and the way I scratched behind her ears. It was uncomplicated love, and I was grateful for it. 6 months after the lawsuit, I got a letter. Not an email or text, but an actual letter, addressed in my mother's careful handwriting. I stared at it for 3 days before opening it, leaving it on my kitchen counter like a test of my resolve. Finally, on a Sunday morning with Luna in my lap and coffee cooling beside me, I opened it. Sarah, it began, not dear Sarah or my daughter, just my name, standing alone. I am writing because your father and I are moving. We cannot afford the house anymore, not with the legal bills and Jessica's expenses. We're moving to a smaller apartment closer to your aunt. I wanted you to know that we're taking the photo albums, all of them. The ones with your baby pictures, your school photos, everything. Jessica wants to make copies for herself, but we've decided against it. If you wanted to be part of this family, you would have acted like it. I hope your house brings you happiness. I hope it's worth what you've lost. Your mother. I read it twice, waiting for the pain. Instead, I felt a strange lightness, like the last chain had been cut. They were taking the photos, the evidence of a childhood where I'd existed in the margins, smiling too hard, trying too much. Let them have those frozen moments. I was making new ones. I took a selfie right there, with Luna and my coffee and my kitchen in the background. My first photo in my new life. I looked tired, but real, present in a way I'd never been in those family albums. That afternoon, I invited Patricia over for lunch. We'd become friends in the way women do when one has seen the other through something raw and difficult. She brought wine and stories from other cases, carefully anonymized, and we sat in my backyard under the oak tree, eating salad made from my garden vegetables. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, "taking them to court?" "They took me to court," I corrected. "I just defended myself." "You know what I mean." I thought about it, really considered it. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they couldn't just be happy for me. But I don't regret standing my ground. This house, it's the first thing that's ever been truly mine, not handed down, not shared, not contingent on being grateful enough or small enough or quiet enough. Just mine." Patricia raised her glass. "To boundaries." "To boundaries," I agreed. A year passed. The seasons changed around my house in ways I'd never noticed in rentals. The oak tree budded, leafed out in green so bright it hurt, turned gold, went bare. I learned its moods, the way it creaked in winter storms, the way birds nested in its branches come spring. I felt like I was in conversation with it, both of us rooted now, both of us standing despite the weather. I got promoted at work, a management position I'd been passed over for twice before when I was too exhausted from family drama to properly interview. Now, clear-headed and well-rested, I nailed it. The raise meant I could finally update the kitchen, replacing the old appliances with ones that actually worked properly. I chose everything myself, the color of the cabinets, the style of the handles, the pattern of the backsplash. Every decision was mine, and every decision was right because I was the only one who had to live with it. One evening, almost exactly a year after the lawsuit, I was deadheading roses in my front garden when a car pulled up. I recognized it immediately, Jessica's SUV, though it looked older now, less pristine. She sat in the driver's seat for a full 5 minutes before getting out. She'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. Her designer clothes hung loose, and her face had the pinched look of someone living on stress and coffee. She stood at the edge of my property like there was an invisible fence. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I replied, continuing to work on the roses. "The house looks good. The garden—" "It's beautiful. Thank you." She shifted, uncomfortable. Jessica had never been uncomfortable in her life. The world had always bent to make her comfortable. This was new. "I wanted to talk to you," she said. "So talk." Could I come in?" I considered it, really thought about what I wanted versus what was expected. "No," I said finally. "We can talk here." Her face fell, but she nodded. I guess I deserve that. It's not about what you deserve, I said, setting down my pruning shears. It's about what I choose, and I choose not to invite you into my home. Mom and Dad are getting divorced, she said abruptly. The news should have shocked me, but it didn't. Without me as their common enemy, what did they have? I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and found I meant it. Not deeply, not personally, but with the kind of distant sympathy you'd feel for strangers experiencing hardship. Dad blames Mom for the lawsuit. Mom blames Dad for not controlling you better. They fight constantly. She laughed bitterly. Turns out when you can't blame the scapegoat anymore, you have to face each other. I said nothing. This wasn't my problem to solve or my guilt to carry. They sold everything, she continued. The house, Mom's jewelry, Dad's car. They're living separately now, each in tiny apartments. Mom says it's your fault. Dad says it's Mom's fault. Neither of them will admit that it's their fault, I supplied. She nodded, tears starting to fall. I lost my apartment, my job. They downsized, but really, I think I was just not performing well. I've been so angry, Sarah, so angry at you for having what I was supposed to have. What you were told you were supposed to have, I corrected. There's a difference. I know that now. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, a gesture so unlike the poised Jessica I'd known. I'm living with Mom, sleeping on her couch. She tells me every day how you ruined our lives. But sitting in that tiny apartment, listening to her bitterness, I started thinking, you didn't ruin anything. You just refused to be ruined anymore. A bird landed on the oak tree, singing its evening song. We both watched it, this small moment of beauty amid the wreckage of what had been our family. Why are you here, Jessica? I asked, finally. I don't know, she admitted. I guess I wanted to see it. The house that destroyed our family. This house didn't destroy anything, I said firmly. The family was already broken. This house just made it visible. She looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in our lives. You're happy, she said, and it wasn't a question. I'm free, I said. Happy is still a work in progress, but free? Yes, I'm free. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for all of it, for taking your things when we were kids, for letting them treat you like you were less than, for believing I deserved more just for existing. I'm sorry. The apology hung between us like a bridge I could choose to cross or not. I thought about all the years of hurt, the accumulated weight of being unseen, unchosen, unloved. I thought about forgiveness and what it would cost me. I appreciate the apology, I said finally, but I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And that's okay. You don't need my forgiveness to move forward with your life, and I don't need to forgive you to move forward with mine. She nodded, fresh tears falling. Could we maybe start over, as adults, as strangers who happen to share parents? No, I said gently. I'm not interested in starting over. I'm interested in moving forward, and that path doesn't include you. I wish you well, Jessica. I really do. I hope you find your way, build your own life, learn to stand on your own feet, but you'll have to do it without me. She stood there for another moment, then walked back to her car. Before getting in, she turned back. The roses really are beautiful, she said. Thank you, I replied. I grew them myself. She drove away, and I went back to my pruning. The roses needed tending, and the evening light was fading. 2 years have passed since the lawsuit, 18 months since Jessica stood in my driveway. I replaced the roof last month, finally had enough saved again. The heating system is next on the list, but there's no rush. The house and I are patient with each other. Patricia and I have dinner once a month, usually at my place. She brings wine and war stories from court. I cook elaborate meals from my grandmother's recipes, the ones I finally had time and space to perfect. We talk about books, about travel, about the ways women learn to take up space in a world that prefers them small. I've dated a little, a fellow nurse for a few months, then a teacher I met at a bookstore. Nothing serious yet, but I'm learning what it feels like to be chosen first, to be someone's priority instead of their afterthought. It's still uncomfortable sometimes, the attention, the care. I'm working on believing I deserve it. The extended family has mostly forgotten about me, which is a relief. Occasionally, a cousin will reach out on Facebook, testing the waters, seeing if I'm ready to reconcile. I politely decline. There's nothing to reconcile. We were never really connected in the first place, just held in proximity by blood and obligation. I hired someone to digitize all my important documents last month, creating my own archive. While organizing papers, I found a birthday card from my grandmother, one she'd given me the year before she died. Inside, in her shaky handwriting, "Sarah, my quiet warrior, one day you will have your own kingdom. Guard it well." I framed it, hung it in my hallway where I pass it every morning. She saw me. Even then, she knew what I would have to do to survive, to thrive, to claim my space in the world. The garden is magnificent now. The rosemary by the door has grown into a proper bush, its scent greeting everyone who enters. The vegetables come in waves, too much zucchini in summer, perfect tomatoes in fall. I give the excess to neighbors, building community in a way my family never taught me, but that feels natural now. Luna has been joined by another cat, a black stray who showed up one winter night and never left. I named him Shadow, and he and Luna have worked out a complex timeshare of the sunny spots. They curl together on cold nights, two creatures who found home in the same place at the same time by choice. Last week, I was pulling weeds in the backyard when my phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Sarah Chin?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "Yes." "This is St. Mary's Hospital. You're listed as Martha Chen's emergency contact." My mother. Despite everything, she'd kept me as her emergency contact. "Is she okay?" "She's had a fall. Nothing life-threatening, but she's asking for you." I stood there in my garden, dirt under my nails, sweat on my brow, and made a choice. "I'm no longer her emergency contact," I said calmly. "She'll need to update her forms." "But she's asking." "I understand, but I'm not responsible for her anymore. She has another daughter, Jessica Chen. You should contact her." I gave them Jessica's number, then hung up. My hands were shaking, but my conscience was clear. I'd spent 32 years being the emergency contact for people who treated me like an afterthought. No more. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset through the oak tree's branches. My phone stayed silent. No angry calls, no guilt trips, no family interventions. They'd finally learned that I meant what I said. I was done. The fireflies came out, dancing in my garden like tiny celebrations. Luna jumped into my lap, purring her approval of the evening. Shadow sat nearby, watchful and content. This was my family now, chosen, cherished, mine. The house on Maple Street isn't grand. The kitchen is updated but still modest. The roof is new but unremarkable. The heating system still needs work. But every inch of it is mine, bought with my money, maintained with my labor, filled with my choices. I think about my parents sometimes, wonder if they're happy in their separate apartments with their separate lives. I think about Jessica, hope she's learning to stand on her own feet instead of on other shoulders. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. They're characters from a story I used to live in, a story where I was written as a supporting role in my own life. This is my story now. I'm the protagonist, the narrator, the author. Every day I write new pages, small moments of joy, quiet victories, peaceful evenings. It's not a dramatic story anymore. It's better than that. It's real. Last month, I got a promotion that came with a substantial raise. First thing I did was set up a college fund, not for children I don't have yet, but for my neighbor's daughter, a bright girl whose single mother works 3 jobs. I remember what it felt like to earn scholarships, to fight for every opportunity. If I can make it easier for someone else, I will. But it's a gift freely given, no strings attached, no guilt woven in. That's how I know I've truly broken free. I can give without depleting myself, help without being diminished. The house has taught me things I never expected to learn. How to fix a leaky faucet, how to know when the gutters need cleaning, how silence can be full instead of empty. How ownership isn't just about property, but about owning your choices, your boundaries, your life. Every mortgage payment is a declaration of independence. Every improvement is an act of self-love. I've started writing everything down, not for publication or posterity, but for myself. To remember that this happened, that I did this, that I chose myself when no one else would. Some nights I read back through the entries, amazed at the woman in those pages. She sounds so strong, so certain. I'm learning to recognize her as myself. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. Anger takes energy, and I need that energy for building, growing, becoming. My parents and Jessica, they're not villains in my story anymore. They're just people who never learned to see me, and I've stopped waiting for them to learn. You can't teach someone to value you. You can only decide your own worth and live accordingly. Sometimes I imagine a different ending to this story, one where my mother shows up at my door with genuine remorse, where my father admits he failed me, where Jessica and I find a way to be sisters. But that's fantasy, and I've learned to prefer reality, even when it's harder. Reality is this house, this garden, this life I've built with my own hands. Reality is choosing peace over reconciliation that would cost me everything I've fought to become. The other day, I was at the grocery store when I ran into an old family friend, someone who'd known us since Jessica and I were children. She looked at me with that expression people get when they're about to dispense unwanted wisdom about family. "Sarah," she said, "life is short. You should make peace with your parents before it's too late." "I have made peace," I told her, "just not the kind you mean." She looked confused, so I clarified. "I've made peace with who they are, who they've always been. I've made peace with not being chosen by them. I've made peace with choosing myself instead. That's the only peace I need." She walked away shaking her head, probably to call my mother and report on my continued stubbornness. Let her. The opinion of people who never stood up for me when I needed it doesn't matter now. This morning, I woke early to work in the garden before the heat set in. The tomatoes are coming in beautifully, heavy and red on their vines. As I picked them, I thought about my grandmother again, how she taught me to know when fruit was ready, not by the calendar, but by feeling, by paying attention. Like people, she'd said once, you know when they're ready to be in your life by how they feel in your hands. Too green, they're bitter. Too ripe, they're too soft. Just right, and they make everything better. My family was never ripe for me. They were always either unformed in their ability to love me or too damaged by their own expectations to see me clearly. But I'm ripe now, ready for my own life, perfectly timed for this freedom I've cultivated. As I worked, I heard laughter from the house next door. My neighbors were having a barbecue, kids running through sprinklers, adults lazy in lawn chairs. They waved when they saw me, called out an invitation to join them later. I said yes, because I can do that now. Say yes to connection that doesn't come with conditions, to family that's chosen rather than assigned. The sun climbed higher, warming my shoulders through my work shirt. I should have worn sunscreen, should have brought water out with me, should have done a dozen practical things. Instead, I stood there among my tomato plants, my hands dirty, my back aching slightly, and felt the kind of happiness that doesn't announce itself with fanfare, but settles into your bones like belonging. I thought about the lawsuit, how my parents and Jessica had tried to take this house from me, how they'd stood in that courtroom and argued that I didn't deserve what I'd earned, that my years of sacrifice meant nothing compared to Jessica's need. How the judge had seen through it all, had named it shameful. That word still echoes sometimes when I doubt myself. Shameful. Not me. Them. Their actions, their choices, their failure to love me as I deserve to be loved. But here's what I've learned. Shame is only powerful in the dark. Once you drag it into the light, name it, refuse to carry it for others, it loses its hold. My parents wanted me to be ashamed of wanting more, of building more, of being more than the shadow they'd assigned me to be. Instead, they ended up revealing their own shame, the favoritism they practiced, the child they'd neglected, the love they'd withheld. I don't wish them ill. That's the truth that surprises me most. I don't want them to suffer or struggle or pay for what they did to me. I just want them to live their lives away from me, in a parallel universe where their choices are their own to navigate. They took so much from my childhood, my adolescence, my young adulthood. They don't get to take anything from this part, the part where I finally get to be whole. The house needs new windows eventually. They're drafty in winter, and one in the guest room doesn't close properly. But I'm in no rush. The drafts remind me that the house is breathing, that it's alive and imperfect and mine. Every flaw is a future project, a reason to keep building, keep improving, keep investing in this space that invests back in me with shelter and safety and silence when I need it. Patricia called yesterday. She's been offered a judgeship and wanted me to know. You changed something in me, she said. Watching you stand up to your family, insist on your worth, it reminded me why I became a lawyer in the first place, to help people claim their space in the world. You helped me claim mine, I told her. No, she corrected. You'd already claimed it. I just helped you defend it. The distinction matters. I wasn't given this life by anyone's grace or permission. I took it, carved it out of years of overtime shifts and ramen dinners, and saying no when yes would have been easier but costlier. Every boundary I set was a brick in the foundation of this house, even before I knew I was building it. Tonight, there's supposed to be a meteor shower. I've set up a blanket in the backyard, have a thermos of tea ready, Luna's carrier nearby in case she wants to join me. These are the small rituals of a life fully lived, not waiting for others to make plans, not shrinking to fit into someone else's evening, but creating my own moments of wonder. I think about Jessica sometimes, wonder if she's learned yet that being the favorite child is its own kind of prison. When you're given everything, you never learn to build anything. When you're always chosen first, you never develop the muscles needed to choose yourself. I was forced to become strong because no one would be strong for me. She was kept weak by their constant protection. In the end, which one of us got the better deal? The answer sits all around me, in every flower I planted, every meal I cook in my own kitchen. Every morning I wake up without dreading the emotional labor of existing in my family's orbit. I got the better deal because I got myself. As the sun sets, painting my house in shades of gold and pink, I water the rosemary one more time. It's thriving, just like my grandmother said it would. Protecting the threshold, keeping the negative energy out, reminding me with its scent that some things survive neglect and flourish with just a little attention. That's what I am now, flourishing. Not in spite of my family's abandonment, but because of it. They cleared the space for me to grow without their shadow, and I've filled that space with light and life and love that doesn't depend on being earned or proved or small enough to swallow. Tomorrow I'm having the kitchen backsplash installed, subway tiles in a soft green that matches the sage of my front door. Another piece of the house becoming more mine, more me. The contractor asked if my husband had any opinions about the color. I laughed and said I didn't have a husband, didn't need one to make decisions about my own house. He looked embarrassed, but I wasn't. There's no shame in being alone when alone means free. The fireflies are out again tonight, and I take it as a sign that the universe approves of my choices. Or maybe they're just fireflies, and I'm just a woman in her garden, and that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. Looking back, I can trace the thread from that first morning when they served me papers, through the courthouse halls, to this evening in my garden. It's a story of subtraction that became addition. The more they took away, their love, their approval, their presence, the more I found I had: strength, clarity, peace. Mathematics of the heart that don't follow normal rules. My phone buzzes. It's the neighbor reminding me about the barbecue. I text back that I'll bring tomatoes from the garden, and she responds with 3 heart emojis. Such a simple exchange, but it holds more warmth than 20 years of family dinners where I was invisible at the table. I go inside to wash the dirt from my hands, catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I look older than 34, maybe, or maybe just weathered in the way of people who've had to grow themselves up. There are lines around my eyes from squinting in hospital fluorescents all those years, saving money for this house. There's gray threading through my hair that I don't bother to dye. This face has earned every mark, and I'm not ashamed of any of them. The house settles around me as evening deepens, making those small sounds that scared me at first, but now comfort me. The language of joists and pipes and foundations doing their work, holding steady, keeping me safe. I've learned to speak this language, to know when something needs attention and when it's just the house living its life alongside mine. In the guest room that Jessica thought should be hers, I've set up an art studio. I'm not good yet, but I'm learning. Another thing there was never time or space for before. Watercolors, mostly, attempts to capture the garden in different lights, the way Luna looks when she's sleeping in sunbeams. They're amateur efforts, but they're mine, and that makes them perfect. The second guest room is a library now, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves my friend helped me build. All the books I bought but never had space to display, plus new ones I'm finally reading now that my evenings aren't spent managing other people's emotions. Sometimes I sit in there just to look at them, all those stories that kept me company when my family wouldn't. This is what they tried to take from me, not just property, but possibility. The chance to discover who I am when I'm not defining myself in opposition to their neglect. The opportunity to fill whims with my own choices, my own dreams, my own quiet rebellions against the life they'd mapped out for me in disappearing ink. But here's what I know now, what the house has taught me. You can't steal something from someone who refuses to let go. And I held on with everything I had, fingers bleeding from the grip, because I knew this was my chance at a different ending than the one they'd written for me. The stars are coming out now, and soon the meteors will trace their brief, bright paths across the sky. I'll lie on my blanket in my backyard and watch them fall, making wishes I don't need to come true because I've already made the important ones happen myself. I'll think about my parents and Jessica, send them a brief blessing across the distance between us. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe never, but a hope that they find their own peace in their own way. And then I'll come inside, lock my door, check on my cats, make tomorrow lunch for work. Small acts of care for a life that deserves tending. The lawsuit wanted to paint me as selfish, grasping, wrong for wanting something of my own. But there's nothing selfish about refusing to disappear. There's nothing grasping about holding on to what you've earned. There's nothing wrong with building a life that doesn't require you to be less so others can be more. The house on Maple Street stands as evidence of everything they said I couldn't do, wouldn't deserve, shouldn't want. Every morning I wake up and it is a victory. Every evening I come home to it is a revolution. Every flower that blooms in its garden is a small rebellion against the narrative that I was meant to be the supporting character, the forgotten one, the daughter who gave and gave until there was nothing left. There's everything left. There's tomorrow and the next day and the next. There's the kitchen backsplash and the new windows and whatever else this house needs to become more itself. There's Luna and Shadow and the neighbors and Patricia and all the relationships I'm building on foundations of mutual respect instead of obligation. There's my promotion and my art and my books and my grandmother's recipes that I'm finally mastering. There's me, whole and unashamed, standing in my doorway under the rosemary that guards against negative energy, looking out at a world that's finally mine to navigate on my own terms. They took everything they could sign and sell, but I kept what they could never touch, my truth and my peace.